with some of the, and then some classes on platforms like Udemy. But then that still didn't foster into a job. So the next thing was to sort of hone my skills a little bit more by sort of, either attending the additional training or finding somebody that can actually help me get into the industry. So I got in contact with some Indians, got some additional training, and then I was finally able to land a job, a contract job in software testing. And I've been doing it ever since. But one thing I like to highlight is that it's a very broad field. Software testing cut across everything and every way, right? If you think about security today, security applications, yes, there are security applications, maybe on the network side, but then most applications for like monitoring software has to be tested, right? If you look at the healthcare side as well, you look at things like maybe electronic data interchange, right? It's called EDI. Whenever you go to a doctor and then the doctor, you finish your visit and they sort of submit your bill to the insurance companies, they do that electronically, right? And some testers are dedicated for just testing just that portion, right? If you look at databases, right? Databases are backend, right? They store information. So if you look at Amazon, excuse me, Amazon has databases that need to be tested on a consistent basis, right? If we come to the government, right, the government sector, there's this type of testing called Section 508, okay? Section 508 focuses more on individuals with disabilities, right? So if you are someone who perhaps have your hearing impaired or, your vision, by the government standards, there's a standard or law that software need to be created to cater for these individuals, right? So if you become a Section 508 tester, you are looking at how can these individuals with disability be able to use the software, right? So there's that portion of testing as well. And then there's things like, middle layer testing, API testing, the automation testing that you made mention of, and so many more. I like this field because you get opportunities to sort of touch on so many things, right? Firstly, one of the softwares I recently, maybe a couple of years ago, tested was a telehealth platform, right? So the idea is that if you don't want to go to the hospital to see a doctor, you can have a doctor visit on your phone. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. I was heavily involved in a project like that. I contributed to that project. And now during the pandemic, that project is I'm actually now seeing the use of such a platform, right? I've worked with health insurance companies that just essentially like healthcare.gov, essentially people are buying insurance, right? And then because of certain criteria they select, the system have to calculate how much the insurance premium is going to be, right? So it's such a broad field. And one thing I always say about software testing is that you don't really need a degree for it, right? Unlike cybersecurity, where you can go get a degree in cybersecurity, unlike these other fields where you can get a degree in networking, there's no degree called software testing degree, right? So regardless of your background, whether you're coming from, psychology or, whether you're a good writer, whatever you are, you can easily integrate into the testing space. The only thing required is maybe, training, like what I do, or maybe someone to sort of guide you through the process, and understanding software, understanding architecture, and then being a lifetime learner. Because as you go through this, you'll be able to learn things like, maybe a little bit of code. You'll be able to pick up things like how the backend work, how databases work, how network works. Right? All those little pieces are things you can learn on your own through this journey. So that's a brief about software testing. It's a wonderful industry. Every company you can think about: insurance, healthcare, government, anywhere software is produced, right? If you look at an example of Clubhouse, right? So Clubhouse has all these features we're enjoying today. Like I just unmuted myself when I'm talking, right? Like people got kicked off the main stage to the software tester will be testing, right? Those are requirements. Those are things that Clubhouse wanted to implement. So as a tester, you're looking at all these different features, and you are testing it as it should work. Does it work, or does it perform the functions that it was intended to be used for, right? So not only that, but you also think about other cases, right? And for example, the mute thing I just talked about. If I mute myself and someone calls me and I answer the phone, right, and I come back, would it still be muted, right? You look at such, sort of detailed level thinking, and that's sort of what I help you to understand during my class. All these different permutations that you can test when it comes to software. I'll yield here. If you have any additional questions, I'll be able to answer. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction, Paul. When you narrated the story behind your journey, I said to myself, this is why it is so important that we ask questions when we meet someone, and also those of us that are privileged enough to be in certain positions, when we have others come to us inquiring about our fields and that they want to join or also pursue a career in that sector or field, we should be willing to show others the ropes. And for me, that is the whole point of life, that whenever we are blessed to have a certain skill or possess some sort of knowledge, we are always willing to share. So thank you, and thank you for touching on electronic data interchange, EDI. It's also something that I've been reading on. So I guess we always learn. One thing I always say that it says that when you come into a room like this and a guest speaker mentions something that you don't know, do some research so that when you are chatting with your friends in the tech space, you can also throw in stuff like that, so that even though you're a newbie like me or a novice like me, they would know that, oh, this person knows their stuff. So thank you. You touched on what software testing is, but I would really want you to break it down for the layman like myself, who, let's say you are explaining what software testing is. You did that to a layman, myself included, sorry. Could you please, you've done that already, but please touch on a few areas and what it is, just explain what it is to a layman, to me, someone who doesn't know anything about software testing. Thank you.
Sure, that's a great question. So software testers work in software development teams, okay? So you're looking at things like, you're familiar with things like business analyst, who a developer is, who a project manager is, right? All of those people are part of a software development team, right? And software testing in general is basically, there's something called Sdlc, Software Development Lifecycle, okay? And within that lifecycle, testing is one of the last phases, right? Before, this is just the life cycle is just basically the process that a software go through from for when the software is actually an idea, when the software is actually achieved as a product. Okay, so testing is one of the phases to make sure that that product is actually working as intended. Okay, I give an example of Clubhouse, right? I'm sure Clubhouse, the initial idea was to sort of start this application, right? Somebody came up with an idea, right? So this is how this Clubhouse example will play out in the testing realm, okay? So the idea started, I wanted to create a software called Clubhouse, right? And then when the idea came up, the person perhaps found some team, right? So he found a project manager, he found a business analyst, a QA or software testing person, a developer, and then the rest of the team, right? So then what happens is that this individual who want to build Clubhouse will have to discuss the idea, right? At least the high level idea, right? And then the business analyst person will be and the project manager will be listening to these ideas and find ways to sort of document these ideas, right? So, for example, Clubhouse might say, we want to do things like, create a registration page. And then when the person registers, we want them to be able to create a room, okay? When they create a room, we want them to be able to invite people to join that room. When people join the room, we want to be able to, control who is on stage and who is, all these different things, right? So they will document it nicely, right? And then after the documentation, the developer, or sometimes, let me just put a developer aside, a design person, right, will design this interface that we're looking at, right? They will take that idea that is written by the business analyst, and then they will design the whole idea, how the user interface should look like, right? So those people, they call them, I think they are called UI UX designers, okay? They will design the whole thing, how it looks like, and all of that, right? So from the design stage, then the developers, they got then all your tests is going to be about mutant and unmutant, right? And then let's say if a new feature gets developed, like, okay, the ability to, let's say, bring somebody to the stage, right? Then you also, think about how to also write test cases like that, right? If I bring someone on stage, can I take them back from stage? Can I put them off the room, right? Can I report them, right? All these different features, right? You begin to make sure that those features are working in addition to other features. But all this is done through a formalized document process, like the test cases I talked about. There's something called test planning, which every feature you test, you have to sort of plan it ahead of time and see how you're going to test it, right? There's a test planning phase. There's a defect management stage. Like, for example, if I find out that the mute button doesn't work as expected, I will report that issue, right? So that the developers can fix it, right? Then we go back and forth until that issue is fixed. So you are managing defects as well, right? You're testing the new features, you're managing defects. And then also, after all these features have been developed, you want to make sure that they all work together as well, right? As a unit, yes, you tested it, but as a collective, as a tester, you want to make sure that collectively, these features are working hand in hand to make it all work. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does, sir. I'm so happy that you mentioned the quality assurance, would we call it an engineer, because some people get confused as to the difference between a software tester and a quality assurance engineer, because I know that the quality assurance people are involved in the entire product life cycle. So they work with in conjunction or with the marketing team to make sure that everything that is going into the product is what the customer needs or requires. And then the software tester is the king of kings who comes in at the end of the day. As you said early on, will test to make sure that if it's controls that need to be given to different sectors or levels of management, person A doesn't have access to something, let's say, to an authorization that is not at their level. And so I'm very grateful for that explanation. That was well put and well said. I would also like to, my next question has to do with the qualification bit. You touched on it, but I would like to find out from you if there's a skill set or some sort of academic or educational qualifications that anyone that is looking at working in the software testing environment needs to possess or acquire before they can gain entry into any role. So if you could please furnish us with that information, that would be really nice. Thank you.
Sure, that's a great question. So with QA, you really don't need any degree. You need, I always, if you have a bachelor, that's great, but it doesn't really have to be in anything, bachelor's and whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But I highly recommend at least an associate. If you really want to do this, try and get yourself at least an associate degree in something IT, right? And most of my students who I deal with who do not have degrees, I recommend them to a school that I know of that do some type of, so they'll teach you like 4 classes and you get like a certificate and like an undergrad certificate and, data analytics or something, right? It only takes about 6 months, right? So individuals who are not or don't have degree, that's the route I sort of take them. But ideally, a bachelor's degree is fine. It doesn't have to be, if it's in engineering or IT, then perfect. You actually know more than individuals who actually, start this journey. But, it's not really, you can have a degree in psychology, sociology, English, especially if you're a good writer. Because as I said, there's documentation in this field. You need to sort of be able to write these test cases I mentioned earlier. You need to be able to write them in such a way that everybody can understand. They're very plain, simple English, but then the level of detail should be there to sort of so that other people can sort of read it and understand what you're doing. But there is no major qualification for QA, and the reason is there's no school that teaches that. Right? Everybody I've met in this field was probably like either a psychology major or English major, or there's nobody I met that actually told me they went to school for it. So yeah, much.
Thank you, Paul. And so when it comes to software testing, is there, I may sound a bit repetitive, but then I really want to get this clarified before we move on to the next question. Well, one does not need, do we need any specific academic qualifications or requirements as a software tester? Because I've been in certain rooms that I've been told that some recruiters are looking for people with, let's say, a bachelor degree in computer science or mathematics in order for them to, that's the education requirements to be a software tester. And then other rooms have also said that no, once you have extensive experience or some sort of on-the-job training, you don't need a degree in order to get into the field of software testing. So could you please clarify that point for us, and then we'll proceed to the next question, please. Thank you.
I think extensive training will do. You really don't need a degree to be able to do this, to be honest. If you can get someone to train you and give you what you need, the realistic experience, you'll be able to do this. And as I said, my degree is in aviation science. Has nothing to do with software testing or IT. But I was able to maneuver my way into this field. So that should tell you that, you can really do it regardless of what, it comes to the experience, right? You can't just say you don't have a degree, but you also don't have experience, right? One thing got to give. So, training and experience and, getting somebody to give you the right stuff will help you be able to land the job. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Yes, it does. So when you say training, what does that entail? Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, so for my class, what I do is, all these different companies I've worked at